Alright everybody, welcome to PM Problems YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel that's supporting my website, which is solvepmproblems.com, where we talk about all sorts of project management problems, common experiences, workplace issues, and construction management, and all that good stuff. I'm going to do this video a little bit more informally today, just to try it out first of all, but also just to talk about something a little bit more personal, which is common weaknesses of project managers, overcoming my 6 main flaws. That's based on an article that's published on the website presently that's getting a lot of positive feedback lately, and I thought it would be good to do a video that supports that article and try to deliver it in another format for everybody. Before we get into that though, be sure to like and subscribe below and click the notification bell as well, so you can get updates when there's new videos, which we'll do more regularly going forward, and we don't want you to miss any of those. With all that said, let's get into 6 common weaknesses of project managers and how I overcame my personal 6 flaws. So first of all, are project managers born or made? I think it's a bit of both. Certainly some people are more inclined to naturally be a project manager, whether they be more of a leader, somebody who can solve problems more efficiently, somebody who can relate to other people really easily. Those things are all natural qualities that many project managers do possess, and a lot of people probably go into an adjacent field that have those qualities, if not being a project manager specifically. A lot of it is made. A lot of qualities can only be acquired through doing. A lot of skills are developed on the job. A lot of experience is required to learn. So that's really what this article and video are about. How to overcome some inherent flaws or weaknesses in our game that we all have in some way. These are things that hold a lot of people back in the beginning of their careers and must be overcome to truly succeed. So as for my own natural strengths, I like to plan things and figure things out. The puzzle aspect of being a project manager really appealed to me. It's a complex job with a lot of moving parts and a lot of adaptation on the fly that makes it exciting. It's a job you look forward to doing and a job that keeps you interested. I also enjoy analyzing reports, looking at financial information. I also enjoy contracts and legal terms and conditions, things of that nature. And other parts of the job like billing and spreadsheets appeal to me as well. So these are some of the parts of my skill set that kind of came naturally to me. Now let's talk about some weaknesses. In the beginning, I wanted no part of telling others what to do or giving anyone instructions. I liked having my work to do. I liked being told what to do. I liked knowing what I have to work on and just dive in head first, block out the world, and do my work. Being a manager of others just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't like telling others what to do. I felt like it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. But obviously, wanting to be a project manager, that's kind of like trying to go left and right at the same time. You can't do both. You have to be willing and able to at least learn how to give others instructions and tell others what to do. Because you have to, and they need it, and the project needs it, and it's a requirement. Someone has to, and it might as well be you. I'm also a bit of a perfectionist by nature. When you're in charge of other people's work, you take on their flaws, and their problems become your problems. You become in charge and responsible for other people's mistakes. You're the one that gets the blame, if you will, if somebody else that works for you on the project does something wrong. It's going to come back to you as a project manager. That's just the way it is. Then there's the reprimanding part. Somebody makes a mistake, or somebody is being combative, or they don't want to do something that they have to do. They disagree with you, whatever it is, you have to deal with it. You have to be able to remedy the situation. That can be uncomfortable, in terms of having arguments with people, getting into the negative side of project management, fighting over money, fighting over responsibilities, that sort of thing. It's funny, I'm not even someone who's afraid of confrontations in the right setting. It's more that when you're doing it for a project, it just, you just feel like it's something, you just feel like there's a heavy negativity surrounding you at work and the things you're dealing with. In turn, this aspect of being a project manager can take away from the passion of actually doing the work, at least before learning how to manage the feelings. And even when you're young and you're working as an assistant or just as a staff member on a project, you get to be more personable and have more friendly relationships with people, whereas that it just changes in a way that you can only really feel through experience once you become the project manager and you become an authority figure. It's of course doable to have good relationships when you're the PM, but it's an adjustment when you are promoted into that role and the relationship with others around you kind of changes to a certain degree. So with that being said, let's go down the list of 6 common weaknesses and how to overcome them. So number 1 on the list is being uncomfortable with giving instructions and telling others what to do. We've already covered pretty well why that's uncomfortable, so let's go through a few solutions. So first off, somebody needs to give direction on a project or any workplace to get anything done. There needs to be a goal set, there needs to be a pace that's kept, there needs to be certain things that get done in a certain order. The project manager is the one to ultimately establish that. course, there's always support and there's help, but the PM is responsible for schedule and a timely completion, not just of the project, but milestones in the midst of it as well. So somebody needs to set the pace, somebody needs to set goals, somebody needs to tell others what to do. It's just the way it is. You're doing your job well when you give direction. When I was an assistant project manager, I wanted somebody to tell me exactly what I should be doing and when it needs to be done. The flip side of that is when you're the PM, then you become that person that's telling others what to do, and they need that. People are going to appreciate that, especially clients. And like anything else, there's a getting used to it aspect to this too. There's a discomfort that comes at the beginning of doing anything for the first time. Once you get used to it, once you get used to giving direction on a regular basis, it becomes like anything else. Most people get hung up here before they even begin. They're terrified of the thought, or at least uncomfortable with the thought of having to give directions and be the boss. They don't even give themselves the chance to get used to it. After a few weeks of giving directions regularly, it's going to become a lot easier. So in short, it can be overcome just by recognizing the importance of giving direction and just getting used to it. All right, number 2 is overcoming perfectionism and accepting good enough. If you want something done right, you just do it yourself, right? That's the old expression. That's your grandpa's expression, for lack of a better word here. But in reality, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. Misinterpretations happen. People just generally make mistakes. And it goes further than that too. Some people just do things a certain way. You might not like it. You might not agree with it. It might not be the way you want it done. The reality is that we can't do a whole project on our own. There's too much to do. There's too many people involved, and we can't nitpick every little thing. Not to mention that other people might do something better than we would. They might know something more. They'll probably have a skill set that we do not have. They probably have done some things we haven't done before. And all of that needs to be taken into consideration. There is no real perfect, but what's perfect for us might not be perfect for somebody else. So here are a few ways to get past this perfectionism as a project manager. First off, there's a quote from George Patton that says, tell people what to do, not how to do it. And the message there is that people will surprise you with their ingenuity. People will find a way that they can do the job well, as long as they know what they need to do. It's a crippling and stifling process to micromanage somebody at every level. In other words, give others enough room to do the work and let them figure it out. Another way is to keep things simple, not to use crazy formats and documents, not to expect something that really doesn't need to be fancy to be some huge extravagant thing. Saying that segues nicely into the Pareto principle, which states that 80% of results come from 20% of actions. It's likely that formatting or other small, minute details really aren't going to matter. They're going to fall in that category of unimportant things that really have no impact to the final result. Getting those critical tasks done the correct way are going to be what makes or breaks a project. Because the reality is that we only have so much time. We only have so many hours in the day. We only have so much time to get a project done. Every minute you spend has an opportunity cost. There's a million other things you could be doing in that minute. So if you're spending 1 minute, 1 hour, whatever it is on a small task, that's 1 minute or 1 hour that's not being spent towards a major task. So really it's almost like burning money. It's picking up pennies hoping to save dollars. It's just not going to happen. So if there's one message to take away from the perfectionist aspect of it, is that doing things perfectly will not involve perfecting every little detail, ironically. Again, there's no set perfect definition, but doing things well does not involve obsessing and spending a lot of time on small, insignificant things. Doing things well is going to involve knowing what's important and spending time most effectively where it matters. So getting over perfectionism in that regard is just recognizing how perfectionism is actually holding you back. It's holding back the end result. It's not helping the end result. Right, so number 3 is becoming the bad guy when required. This is something a lot of people have trouble with, especially someone like myself who's easygoing and generally positive. So it's important to ask ourselves why. Why is that uncomfortable? For me anyway, it was feeling like I was doing something wrong when I was being the bad guy. The truth of the matter is that some people need to be reprimanded sometimes. Some people don't have the best intentions. Some people are just wrong. Some people make mistakes that are bad mistakes, or silly mistakes. The reality is that a project can't function with bad people on it. A project can't function with people who are arguing over things when they're not correct, or making careless mistakes, or being lazy. A project simply can't get done well with those factors. This goes back to earlier in the video, where we're ultimately accountable. As a project manager, we're accountable for what other people do. It's sad in reality too that your reputation matters as a project manager. If people see you as a weakling or a pushover, they're going to exploit that. Even people who might not have bad intentions won't hustle as hard. They won't feel as though you're serious when you give direction or when there's a deadline. For lack of a better word, you need to have some street cred on the project. There have been times when I've caught somebody blatantly disrespecting me before and I had to put them in their place. but it was worth it because I never had an issue with that person again. There's an expression that people don't respect the bite of a dog with no teeth. Unless you're willing to lay down the law when someone steps out of line, problems will continue. And it's important to realize that there's a spectrum to enforcing rules. You don't have to scream at somebody like a maniac when they make one small error. I like to think of it as a volume knob. You're turning up the volume slowly. If somebody isn't responding to a 3 out of 10 on the knob, you turn it up to 4, and so on. Rarely do you need to bring it to a 10. That's probably what most people are afraid of, is they don't want to scream, or they don't want to be angry, or they don't want to be somebody that's blatantly getting in someone's face. But that's really almost never required. It's not as bad as you think it'll be. It's just a matter of getting used to it. It's a matter of sticking to the rules, enforcing boundaries, pushing for deadlines, and reprimanding those that step out of line. It's not being an animal. It's not being a gorilla pounding your chest. It's simply sticking to the rules and defending the rules, for lack of a better word, when someone steps out of line. And those rules and boundaries include your own self-respect and your own standards. So number 4 on this list is a related topic. It's navigating through disputes. So in the world of project management, it's inevitable that you'll work with somebody, probably a subcontractor or a vendor, that will want more money, or they'll disagree with what they should or shouldn't have to do on the project, along with a million other adjacent reasons, although they typically boil down to those 2 things in most scenarios. So first off, I think it's important to realize that everybody thinks they're right. Nobody goes into a situation, or at least most situations, thinking that they're wrong, but they're going to try to exploit you or try to push the envelope. They all generally believe that they're right. Even if it's obvious that they're not right to somebody else or to you, doesn't mean that they don't think they're right. This is exactly why projects aren't agreed to on a handshake. That's why there's written agreements. That's why there's contracts. And the more detailed the contract is, the less chance there will be an actual dispute that can't be settled just by looking at the contract. That's the most important thing. So stick to written agreements. When it comes to navigating disputes, you got to stick to what's written and what's agreed to. What's important there is, again, realizing that everybody's capable of being wrong, including us. We might think that somebody has to do something in their scope of work on a project, and they might not. Perhaps we misinterpret what their scope is at first glance, or perhaps they misinterpret what their scope is at first glance. That's just something to keep in mind, that mistakes are made by everybody, including ourselves. When we do recognize that another person thinks they're right, even if we disagree, the situation then feels less confrontational and personal. One thing you can do as a project manager is to offer solutions or alternatives that still satisfy the scope of work and don't put you or your company or the client in a bad situation, and yet try to work with the person that's in dispute with you. Say it's a subcontractor. If they have a certain portion of work that they need to do, or they're asking for more money when it's not warranted, you can try to work with some creative solutions on how they can still get their work done and get it done right without crushing them. In short, it's important to stick to the written agreements and try to work with people through disputes, not against them. All right, number 5 on the list is being the client's point of contact and taking responsibility for the overall project outcome. So one good example of this is a restaurant. When we're the customer at a restaurant, we read the menu, we decide on our meal, we know what we want, we expect to receive what's written on the menu in the way we asked for it within a reasonable time frame, for the price they say it is. In a customer's eyes or client's eyes on a project, that's what they expect of us. Only we get to be the host, the waitstaff, the kitchen supervisor, and the restaurant manager all at one time. Carrying the restaurant example over into being a project manager, we can imagine what our client wants to receive from us. In other words, they're paying the bill and they expect to be taken care of. As PMs, we should do exactly what we say we're going to do. If a waiter says they're going to bring us our meal in 10 minutes, that's what we expect them to do. Similarly, if we tell our client that we're going to submit a set of documents for approval by Friday, we need to do that. If it doesn't happen, we need to tell them well in advance why it isn't going to happen. And just keeping an open dialogue with clients is important, and keeping them up to date on what we're doing and when we're going to do it and hitting those marks. We should be meeting with our clients regularly, giving them agendas and writing meeting minutes following those meetings, outlining exactly what we're going to do. Just like in a restaurant, transparency is everything. If our food's going to be a few minutes late, but we're told that, it's not a big deal, or at least it's not as much of a big deal. But if we're sitting there waiting for an extra 20 minutes and have to chase our waiter down and find out where it is, then we're not so happy. I worked in a restaurant for many years, so I have a million metaphors from that time. And here's another one. Some customers are just a pain in the neck, chasing you down as a waiter for every little thing. They'll be complaining about every aspect of their meal. They'll want the world delivered to them, and they don't want to tip well, and everything takes too long, and it's nothing but complaints. We can get clients like that too in the world of project management. As important as it is to stick with the principles we just discussed, it's also important to set boundaries with them. A part of why meetings and meeting minutes and agendas are so important is because you can stick to what's written as boundaries for yourself as well. While we do need to uphold what we say we're going to do, we can also fall back on these records to point out when a client is being unreasonable, or where they're making demands, or they're misinterpreting what should be happening at any given time. And number 6 on our list is letting go of our original disciplines and embracing the management. Most of us come from a specialty background or a specific discipline before becoming a project manager. This can be anything from an engineer to a designer to a programmer to an accountant to an associate or even an assistant project manager in the same field. And it's tough because we need to give up some of the work that we either enjoy doing or we've been doing and are used to doing. There's an adjustment period by embracing new responsibilities and being in charge of work that we weren't in charge of before. A lot of people who become project managers eventually go back to where they came from because they didn't like that they couldn't do their own specialty work anymore. So here are a few ways to get past that. You can still do the work you like, you just need to manage the project first. One thing I like to do is do the work of a manager in the morning, that is having meetings, reaching out to other people, coordinating tasks with others first, and then in the afternoon you can focus on the tasks you like while other people get work done in the background for the project. Then you'll be uninterrupted and uninhibited to work on the stuff you actually want to do. This is a great technique to use to get a lot of work done in a short period of time. The afternoon is when I'd spend a lot of time on financial spreadsheets and budgeting and looking at cost reports and things of that nature that I enjoy doing, since the meetings and discussions that I need to have with others were already done. Another thing to keep in mind is if you want to move up to C-level executive or become a business owner yourself, the managerial aspect of being a project manager is absolutely crucial. You need to be able to manage other people, you need to be able to manage deadlines and processes that involve coordination and decision making. So if you ever want to move up into those sort of positions, the skill sets of a project manager are must-haves. And a big part of that is just wanting to reach a goal, like being an upper level manager or even just managing a project despite being uncomfortable. If you want to do something, you'll find a way to do it. The expression of being comfortable with the uncomfortable is applicable here. You just need to be able to push through some of these difficulties and know that the things you want to do in your career are going to happen only through this process. It's okay to not want to be a project manager too. It's just important to realize that you can't have your feet in two different boats. You can't expect to be a project manager but then also stick to your specialties, either one or the other, typically. So in summary, here are a few things to keep in mind. Becoming a project manager is a marathon process, it's not a sprint. It won't happen overnight, it'll happen over weeks, months, and even years of effort. Another thing to keep in mind is to only tackle one area of improvement at a time. If you have trouble giving direction, focus on just giving direction clearer and become more comfortable with that, and then address what other improvements you may need to make. Because it's not as hard as it seems, The vast majority of effort is going to be just getting over that initial hurdle of being uncomfortable with doing something for the first time. You're capable of doing a lot more than you might think. We all are. And lastly, there's nothing wrong with not being a project manager too. Projects can't get done without PMs, sure, but they also require a variety of specialists and people with many other skill sets. So with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, talking a little bit more informally about overcoming weaknesses as a project manager. These were 6 of my weaknesses that I still, to this day, I'm working on improving and getting better at. I'll put a link below to the article on our website if you want to check it out. So thanks a lot for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe by clicking below.